Hi guys, you're very welcome to the new episode of New Earth Kings podcast. This, as always, this is the podcast where we're put you front and center. It's about kicking off a revolution of 1 million plus men around the world who will engage intensively, immensely, with massive love in their personal, local, and global revolutions. And you are front and center on this revolution. Today's guest that I have on is Jason Seaward. Jason is a really great mate of mine that I've gotten to know so well over the last, I think, year and a half. And Jason has a fascinating story of relationships, two marriages for 10 years, divorces, but what has emerged out of that, and it's really at the core of the essence of New Earth Kings and just the king archetype, which is like no pressure, no diamond. It's the hero's journey. It's really extrapolating, taking out the core essence of the lessons of life. And Jason's incredible message coming forward from that experience, plus but all just the experience of his life, running his company and his recruitment company too. At the core of the message that Jason is embodying in life going forward is that of connection, the importance of connection for men, for women, for humanity. It's really just such an important topic. I can't really say much more than that. Like, Jason has been my guru of connection for the last year or so, jumping on calls and that. So it's without any more babbling from this man's mouth, Jason Seaward, you're very welcome on, sir.
It's a great introduction, Mark. Thank you, man. Yeah, that's really nice.
Jason, I should just say I'm all smiles now. I'm really having to make a big effort here. I'm actually starting from a really profound point of disconnection. I have to be vulnerable up front. I mean, I don't know if you're the only Kiwi that doesn't follow the Rugby World Cup, but
Oh,
you boys just whipped Irish butts just like in the last week. So, I'm really trying. I'm really trying hard, man, to keep this connection from the start. But you have a traumatized soul here.
yeah, I'm sorry about that.
no,
Yeah,
no, you're not.
yeah. Well, you're up against the All Blacks, that's always going to be tough.
Yeah.
That's so good. We're so proud of them, as everyone's proud of their national, games. Mm, mm.
It's just such a wonderful part of the New Zealand culture, though. It's like such a phenomenal, powerful thing. Their level of dominance over, like, it's literally over a century. To be so dominant at a sport or any endeavor, a business endeavor, whatever the endeavor is, to hold such a dominance is, it's 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 such a special culture that has been created there.
Yeah, you're right. It is. And um, it really is a team culture and some form of the way they've always done it is ingrained in that culture of men here becoming an All Black, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know 100%, but they operate on a champion team will always beat a team of champions, and it's such a great motto. They always try to play like a team, and yeah, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but it certainly plays out very well for New Zealand.
Yeah, for sure. And like the rest of the world sort of is getting there just about, but then falling off, and it's that consistency. And I think what jumps out for me, and I do actually believe it's in just we're sort of playfully coming in at connection from maybe a surprise side, but it's that depth of connection that they seem to have this capacity to reconnect with that inner, might even say king essence, definitely that warrior essence. And the Haka, the Haka just seems to be at the epicenter of that cultural, that special, unique culture. Um, how is the Haka? I know, like the rest of the world, we sort of see the Haka, the New Zealand All Blacks doing it, but could you just give us like an insight into just everyday New Zealand culture? What role does the Haka play for the rest of you guys that aren't on the All Black team?
We always do it before breakfast and last thing at night. No. Yeah, look, it's part of our indigenous culture, and I believe it was probably like a battle cry, like um, a warning to the enemy that the Māoris were coming, and just to send fear into the opposition. So you can see that obviously on the world stage, which is, yeah, I'm always like so grateful that we've got the haka. If I was another country, I'd probably come up with something to do after they do the haka. That would be my take on it, just to kind of level the playing field, because I think we're pretty lucky to have that. But yeah, I mean, I've heard people talk about it in a state of a declaration of fierce love and connection as well. Like, boy, when you're around the haka or you're doing the haka, you're just taken over with it. It just gets so in you. You. Well, me, I can't help but be in awe of it whenever I see it. And a lot of the times in the rugby's on, I'll just watch it. I will not miss the haka at the beginning. Yeah, so it is well ingrained and just a beautiful thing, beautiful part of our culture.
I have a funny, I sort of have a funny, unique personal connection with the haka. I've actually shared it. I've shared it with your brother
Do
Nathan.
tell me.
Nathan actually was the first guy that I gifted my Irish version of the haka. I've been having, and there again, it's just coming from this connection because in my process, and we're going to talk more like, obviously your journey of connecting with yourself, but as I was doing my own inner work, slowly but surely bubbling away in the background, getting deeper and deeper. One evening, I just realized one thing. I'd been having for years, well over a decade, regular enough, like on and off, I'd have these really vivid visions of me performing the haka in front of a large
No
crowd.
way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this evening, I was up just after putting the girls to sleep, and it came to me. It's like, okay, Mark, there's no point putting this off anymore. I'd been putting it off as in, any red blood male, any macho guy, sees the New Zealand All Blacks doing a haka. Screw it, it's only natural. Like the whole fucking world of men out there must be thinking of doing a haka. But then it was like, no, come on, there's way more significance to that. You can't explain sort of over 10 years this regularly coming. So I came down the stairs to Matilda, walked into the kitchen, and said, I am going to find a man from New Zealand that will teach me the haka. So that was it. And I'd been getting into law of attraction.
Wow.
You set your intention, and so it is. Asking, you shall receive. So that was cool. Said it like that. Didn't think another word. We just got on with life. 4 days later, I got an email, and it was Maori shaman visiting local center. Literally, like we were living in sort of the rural Ireland, small little village, quaint, definitely not at the epicenter of cultural things that would be happening around Ireland. And the email was Maori shaman coming to local heritage center, doing one day workshop, and the core of which he's teaching the haka.
Unbelievable.
And I just was fucking blown out of the water. So really, like I just share this little bit because it's really such a key thing, and it's just that the spiritual essence of the haka and the practitioners of it. I said, like, of course I signed up. I went to the meeting. It was this master healer, shaman healer from the Maori community. And I said nothing of my visions. I said nothing of setting that intention. And we just at the lunchtime break, I just went over to Mauta and I said, "Hey Mauta, how did you decide to come to Arda of all places?" It was the one place that he decided to come to in the country, which anybody outside of Ireland, it's like not Dublin, not Galway, not Cork, not the one of the main city centres. Small little missable community. And Mauda just turned to me and he goes, "My spirit guide sent me."
No way.
At this point, I have goosebumps all over my body. There's hair sticking
Wow.
on my back. I said, Mausa, when did you decide to come here? And he goes, it was quite funny, Mark. It's just very recent. I was like, how recent? He said, I think in the last 6 or 7 days, I just woke up with this massive impulse that I had to get to Ireland. And my first Google search, this is what arose. I told him the story.
Wow.
I told him the story then, and he was like, well, then you're why I'm here. So anyway, I've been practicing the Irish four powers Haka for the last 2 years, pretty regularly. And yeah, it's just there's such a spiritual essence to it, and it's connecting whoever does it with that inner perfect pure essence, that spiritual essence. That it's not that my words is you don't do the Haka, you become the Haka.
Mm, mm,
Jason, you
wow.
you speak very powerfully in your own journey about the social conditioning, and you have been doing such a tremendous deep inner work as a man to sort of peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, to reconnect with that perfect spiritual essence, that essence of who you have always been. um, could you just talk to me a little bit about that process and what has come up for you in that journey?
Mm, mm. Well, yeah, I think I don't know where to start, but like I'm now getting a glimpse of that little boy, that um, with full of wonder and um, big intentions, big hopes and dreams for the world. Yeah, and so that wasn't me for a long time. And in my last divorce, coming up 6 years ago, I really got to see that I wasn't connected, that I wasn't connected to many people, and I wasn't connected to my ex-wife. So um, through therapy, I did 18 months of therapy, and that's when I really got to see, like, the lid really got taken off. And I was like, oh, well, this is worse. This is worse than I thought. Holy moly. We need to get the shovels out and the picks, and, we really need to take a deep dive in here. And yeah, once I guess the key, there's so many key moments, but when someone explained connection to me, or that there was such a thing as connection, and the fact that I didn't know what that was or had never heard about it before, that was a really big light bulb moment. I was like, oh, connection, right? What's that? And so I lived a very controlled facade, keep all the plates spinning, make sure everything's happening kind of life. Yeah.
Jason,
Yeah.
how do you remember how connection was defined to you back then?
Back then, no. So no one actually they didn't say what it was, just that there was a connection or a lack of connection. So there was the 2 points, and it was through probably Brene Brown was my biggest insight to it. And, she says the energy that exists when people feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. And I was like, wow. I walked around for ages saying that sentence really, really slowly to myself so I could let it sink in. Yeah. And even that's 2 or 3 years ago. And the more I look, I guess to be connected, for me to be connected to other people and things, the process as it went I realized I actually have to figure out who it is that people were connecting to. So it very quickly became, who am I? Who am I to be connected? Yeah. And that really took a deep dive. Then I was like, okay, jeepers, yeah, who am I? I haven't thought about that in 30 years. That one just went under the radar. Yeah.
And
I
what
should
answer?
teach that in school.
What? There's a lot of stuff that should be taught in school. Probably 90% of what, just scrap 90% of what is being taught to actually get to that real core essence. What answer has been emerging for you for who is Jason Seaward?
Good question. It's been an evolution of that. It started in so many different ways. First, I was like, oh, Jason is this. Jason is a man, is a father. Jason's a family man. He's a businessman. He likes racing cars or motorbikes or anything, so it was all very practical. And then I did I am statements every night for about 2 years, on and off like a diet. Okay, so there's not every night, is it? There's nothing we do that we can do every night, but and it was like, I am love, I am compassion, I am caring, I am thoughtful, I am success, I am loving, I am friendly. Mate, I just could go on for like a minute of I am stuff, and it was so great. And I think that works in the background and just kept working away on me, because I found I started becoming more thoughtful and more compassionate and more empathetic. So I'm kind of the first 30, 40 plus years of my life, there's no regrets, and we can't do it all again, right? But I can look back now and go, holy moly, that was like a box ticking. Let's do this, let's order this, let's make it all work kind of life. And I completely missed compassion and empathy and thoughtfulness. So I don't know how other people or other men are. This was my experience. I looked back and I was like, I'd really lacked those things, and almost in an embarrassing way. I was quite embarrassed. And then I looked back on my life and I thought, oh, geez, there's been a lot of embarrassing times, I've never thought of people's birthdays. I've never remembered a lot of things. So there was plenty of evidence for that for me. Yeah.
Jason, when you talk about that hidden inner child lessons, and then that wave of sort of social conditioning that's put upon us, from your unique context growing up, when you look back and with the deep work you've done, what are the unique elements of the society in which you were born into? What are the main elements of that society, of the messages that it sort of put upon you, that you see now maybe form that disconnection? Because obviously you come in as a child, you're connected. Children, we're connected. You go to a playground. I know with our girls, you go to the playground, that's beautiful. Doesn't matter the color, doesn't matter the race, doesn't matter the gender, it doesn't matter shit. They're just connected. So what were the individual, what were the components of the social conditioning for you that maybe colluded to form that disconnected Jason?
Well, I love that saying that children are the closest to consciousness. So when we come as babies, we're the most conscious. Obviously, we can't speak or write or talk, but then we get that social conditioning layered on us. And if I look at my life, it's certainly you can't do these things. It's the lack of being able to dream and have fun. And it's so harmless and innocuous. I went to a talk a wee while ago, and the guy was like, have fun with your kids. Say to them, when they say, you know, why don't we do this? Say, well, why don't we go and jump out of a plane that's made of bananas? You know, why don't we get as much oil as we can and pour it down the street and roll around in oil? What would that be like? You know, we're so analytical and box ticking. So I think it's very innocuous, and obviously would come from teachers and parents, and plenty of people would say that no one was trained in this whole parenting thing. Everybody just makes it up, and I certainly did that. Absolutely, you know. So yeah, I've always had a very strong sense of self-belief, and it's my personal view that 90% or 100% of people do, and then we kind of get that knocked out of us. And like, I've always had this feeling like I can do it, I can do anything, and it's like trip, oh, ouch, you know, and then you pick up and you go again and you go again and you keep doing that. That's been my experience of life, is that way of like always thinking, wow, I'm going to build a plane out of bananas and it's going to be amazing. It's just that hope, and that's that dream and desire. Unfortunately for me, I was molested as a child, and that would have, I can see now, that would have really shut me down. Like, but the worst thing it did is it gave me a skewed view of love, because people, they groom you, and then, you know, it would turn out that when I look back at my life, I was a lost, lonely, emotionally neglected child. So that takes, and look, nobody did that on purpose. I get all that now. Everybody does the best they can with the information they have, right? And that was around 9, and so that really probably took a toll on me. But I didn't know for 20 or 30 years, you know, what had happened there. And then when I was 15, I was dropping my stepfather off at the airport at 7 o'clock in the morning at our local airport, and on the way back, it was really foggy, and I'd only just got my driver's license, and jeepers, I don't even know if I've told you this, but I hit a cyclist. I ran into a cyclist when I was 15, and then the cyclist died. And now I understand what happened back then. I cried for an hour and nobody came to me, because I guess in that moment they're looking after the guy. You know, they're trying to keep him alive, the ambulance, and everyone's there and they're all trying to do that. But I was just so alone. You know, I wanted God, I wanted my mum, you know, I wanted just anybody. And I think for me, I really shut down. I really, really shut down. It's all subconscious, isn't it? And now when I look back 30 years later, I mean, I only talked to my dad about that day 2 years ago when I was 50. There was no way to deal with that stuff back in the 80s, which is when it was. You just kind of got up and you had a couple of days off school, and then you went, you know, you went back to school, and it's all subconscious, I think. Yeah, so that's that. Couple of big things there, Mark, and then the rest is just probably, you know, pushing against the agreement of being safe, doing what's normal, and you know, if you stick your head up, it gets a whack. Maybe that's the social conditioning you're talking about.
Yeah. Jason, what comes up from within myself, I'm curious to know, it's coming from a personal narrative in my own life. You know, you remember that time when you were 15 and you cried for an hour, and just the loneliness of that. When was the next time that you cried? Was there a period where just tears left your life?
Yeah, yeah, like 35 years, I think. Yeah, I still struggle with that.
Just
Yeah.
coming like why I ask that. Um, I know myself. I had, and there's always, I say this to guys in coaching. I say this in like in group work with guys. Suffering or traumatic experiences. It's incomparable. It's always incomparable. There's no point comparing. The the trauma for myself, the emotional trauma for myself was looking on at my parents not getting on together. And, I caveat that with they're still together. They're heroes of my life, from the childhoods they've had and the experiences and the generation they came from. They've carved out, within the limits of their capacities, a wonderful, long lasting marriage. So heroic in so many regards. But funny enough, I think as a 15-year-old, 14, 15-year-old, um, I don't know if there's some sacred relevance about that time, but I remember there was sort of this bickering going on. There was a bit of tension there. There was never really a massive connection with them. And I ended up forming my own sort of, one of my main things in college as a young man was this disconnect from the opposite sex, this fear of intimate connection, like a real, incredibly intense fear of connecting. Could connect as a friend. I was actually great. I mastered sort of social connection in every other single regard, but intimate connection is really petrified me. But it was that moment when I was coming home in the car from secondary school. I still remember the day. It was like after playing a football match, had the uniform on, walked into the kitchen, and I had this voice in me that wanted to be heard. And effectively, it was like, I couldn't, my childlike essence couldn't understand, couldn't comprehend the level of disconnection. I suppose I mightn't have used those words at the time, but that would be the most accurate interpretation now. And I stood there for about an hour in the kitchen. And I remember my mother looking over, and she knew it's like, I was just standing in the kitchen, silent, looking on at them. And
Wow.
she asked me several times, she was like, Mark, are you okay? What's up? And it's like I can even feel his voice coming up now, wanting to just say whatever, guys, do you not, like, this is craziness, like, you're so wonderful, you're so amazing. I suppose it's just like I just wanted to feel love, and I wanted to feel safe, I wanted to feel security, and I didn't feel secure, if I own my emotions now. But I ended up there for that hour, didn't manage to say it, walked down to my bedroom and cried for, I cried myself to sleep. I don't know. Could have been an hour, could have been
Wow.
an hour and a half. And then there was this window of, I think, about 9 or 10 years. Tears did not come.
Wow.
It's just coming from there. And I suppose, the guys listening in, I wonder if that's a common feature within guys, because we live in such a culture where, tears aren't freaking allowed.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I wonder what it is that, for me, I feel it was definitely that moment, but maybe we all have a moment where, that gets shut down, and like you say, it must be the social conditioning on top of that, like that it's not okay. Well, you don't cry, harden up, get over it, whatever the saying is.
Like we were talking in the beginning, obviously, sort of humorously about the New Zealand All Blacks, but I imagine there must be quite a culture within New Zealand of, if that's the modeling of masculinity, it's probably one of the most specific modeling of masculinity within New Zealand culture. I mean, they're tough, they're hard ass, they go out in pitches, vulnerability. It's actually, they're famous for their invulnerability. You know,
Mm. Mm.
is that an accurate depiction maybe of where New Zealand culture has been, at least in the past, with masculinity, or how would you describe that culture?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think once again, it's probably everywhere. and we have different versions of it, would you think? You know, like, we don't, it's that imbalance of masculine, you know, where we don't have, is that a representation of New Zealand? I guess so, that, to answer your question. And I think we're pretty hardy down here because whoever the heck jumped on those boats 150 years ago and sailed for like 3 months or 6 months, however long it took them to get here, those that didn't die on the way probably kissed the earth when they got here, I'd say. And so I definitely think we have a part of that sort of in our culture, which gets a lot of stuff done here. I mean, I still remember 40 years ago, 50 years ago, well, obviously 40 years ago, you made stuff. Everyone made things because you couldn't import them. Like today in the global world, you can pretty much get everything anywhere, can't you? But we lived a very sort of separated life on these 2 islands at the bottom of the world, just almost at Antarctica, you know? So there's a bit of that in our culture for sure. But I think I've traveled and, you know, it's a pretty generic sort of male thing, wouldn't you say? Like coming from the other side of the world, would you say the Irish are probably similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look back, and I know you've spoken powerfully online in your live Facebook videos just about suicide. You know, suicide rates
Yeah,
in Ireland. I mean, it's sort of, I think, 9 men to 1 woman
yeah,
is the ratio. It's such a skewed ratio, but it gives such an indication as to, you know, like if literally we're more willing to jump off a bridge or, you know, end their life than actually put the hand up and say, guys, you know, I need help here. It really is such a clear indication of where, as you say, that imbalance of masculinity has pervaded, and it's not unique to New Zealand and Ireland. I mean, it is.
mm,
I would agree with you. I think it is quite general.
mm. And this is the work that we're doing. I think this is, yeah, certainly the work you're doing, Mark, which I want to be a part of. And I see a lot of people doing it now, talking about suicide and talking about the toxic masculinity and, you know, the definitions around that. But the bitter pill to swallow probably for people is that we've all got masculine, feminine traits, but I'm just going to make stuff up here because haven't done any research, and I'm not a professor or anything, but like it would seem we're too much in the masculine. Our balance is a little bit out. And in my journey with masculine, feminine, I've learned like the feminine is responsible for love, creativity, empathy, compassion, and masculines are doing, you know, like hunting, racing, running. Yeah, like of course everyone can do all of those things. But what I've learned most recently is the balance that we have in each of us that I think could make a difference. So for me to, because like a lot of men will resonate with the fact that I don't need to be any stronger. I don't need to be any tougher. If you come over here, Mark, I'm going to wrestle you. You're going to beat me, but I'm still going to wrestle you because if you wrestle me, I'm going to wrestle, you know, we're going to do that, right?
Yeah.
If someone's going to do something to me, we've got that strength. We've got that braveness. We've got the courage. We've got all those things down pat. We may not like it, but we've, you know, I know for myself, I don't need to be any stronger. I've got that bit down pat. But love, creativity, compassion, connection, you know, I want to bring, so if my masculine's a bit outweighed, you know, and I can bring more feminine in. And so this is the bit that I don't know. Like, where does that sit, right? I think for a man, this feminine one probably shouldn't go above the masculine, right? And I think women are in the same thing, you know. So if this is the feminine here, then they want to get shit done too, right?
Mm.
So they've got to get this balance right. That's something I've really been learning about. Boy, you talk about that on the rugby field. You're going to get your ass kicked. I'm not bringing any femininity into my masculinity. And I use the rugby field as a general term for, like, you could be sitting at the pub having a pint and saying, I think I'm going to just bring more of my feminine into my life. And I don't know, what's your experience? Could we say that? Is that something we can talk about?
I'm coming to find out that yes. And this is a really recent phenomenon in my own life, where I've been talking about the concept of wild man. My definition is without inhibition, living dharma, and like it's a bit like you and the I am statements. I've been like sort of playing with that idea and playing with radical confidence, confidere, with immense trust in myself, with immense trust in the universe, and just submerging in that, and slowly but surely just coming to, okay, fear of opinions of others, the good or bad opinions of others, because it can be the alluring, people, Jason or whoever says, oh, good man Mark, you're doing cool videos, but it's not to get allured by the good or bad opinions. In the middle of that, just being me as much as I can. I have found recently that there's guys that my mindset of maybe a year ago, definitely 3, 4, 5, shit, if I go to 10 years ago, absolutely. Where, we make these subconscious distinctions. We make these subconscious judgments. It's a survival basis. It makes sense. Like, is this dude safe? Am I safe to open up? Am I safe? Is my life safe? We'll go through the sort of hierarchy of needs. We want to be safe in people's surroundings. But when we're all doing that, it's by default, we're judging somebody. So recently, when I've put that to the side, I have been blown away by when I just speak from the heart and soul. Completely from the heart and soul. I was speaking with a guy recently, and like a tough guy, really tough, sort of like in Irish culture, and I love the dude. Like, we spoken so much in depth after, but like, from an Irish cultural point of view, it's like the hair sort of skin tight, really tight, tattoos everywhere. He's a tough, muscular, really tough guy, which for me growing up, I was the thin, skinny dude. He was the sort of archetypal. This fella was like the polar opposite. And I said that to him. It's actually one of the guys that I roll with in the mats and jiu-jitsu. I went up to him on the mat and I said, look, I actually fear you. This is why I voluntarily go over to roll with you as often as I can, because you bring up a fear response in me. And we ended up, we spoke off the mats. But, within 1 minute of me speaking from the heart and soul, next thing, this is like during a jiu-jitsu session. Next thing, we're 10 minutes there and we're riffing on the teachings of Jesus. And I'm just like, I use that as an example of, we, like, as men, we have no idea of the transformational capacity of when we actually just lead. From vulnerability, we lead, we speak from the heart, we speak from the soul. I'm rapidly seeing that it's like, I believe sort of every guy out there wants to open up, wants to actually have somebody that just leads, so that they can say, holy shit, like, me too. The hashtag me too is so powerful, because everybody wants to say me too to something, me too to just expressing that. So I don't know what comes up for you, Jason, that way in your experience of speaking with guys.
Oh, mate, that's so beautiful. Our podcast is done. That's it. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Don't be putting me on pressure, Jason. We're meant to bang out another 45 minutes here, dude. Shit.
Oh, no, I'm just joking. But, like, I mean, that's so beautiful. Like, that's the message right there. People talk about vulnerability and they're like, oh, you're being vulnerable. You're not being vulnerable. You're doing this, you're doing that. You're not strong. You're manly. You're not manly enough. You're too feminine. Fuck's sake. What you just talked about there, you pick a man, any man, and if you could get them on their own, I feel 90% of the time, they're going to have the hashtag Me Too. They're going to want to talk. I think we're all trapped in this stupid cage of trying to conform and be something from, the gladiator days. It's just in our genes. It sits there. But luckily, thanks to all the men that are working on this now and the actual consciousness that's going around the planet, we're waking up and we're like, oh, I don't have to be a rockhead anymore. I don't have to just grunt and push stuff and move things. And, that's so beautiful what you said. Like you opened up to that guy. You took the vulnerable step and he was into it. That does not surprise me, right? And I know it probably doesn't surprise you. And that's what's coming.
Jason, one real powerful concept that I love when I've heard you speaking about it several times now. It's like when you talk about the awakening of consciousness, the awakening of men, masculinity, positive masculinity, this core concept of remembering. And it's so simple, it's so simple, yet just every time I hear you speaking about it, it's like there's new layers of what you're actually talking about it. Would you mind expanding on what you mean when you talk about remembering?
Yeah, sure. Like we that's all we actually need to do. And for me is remember. And for me as a lifelong learner, 20 years of personal development and reading books and tips and tricks, just trying to figure out if I do this, if I do that, then finally I'll be safe, or I'll make it, or I'll keep these people happy, or even I'll be happy. But actually, the older I get and the more I've learned about intuition, like check your intuition. Check that shit out. Where's that coming from? We've all got it. When our gut doesn't feel right, or we're doing something and we know we shouldn't be doing it. It's intuition. It's strong. Everyone's got it. So there's multi-layers to this remembering. And from what I can make out, we live a lot of separation. We live a lot of soloness, like on our ownness. We can even be I've had 2 10-year marriages, and I know even in those marriages, we were singles being married. And that doesn't mean that's wrong. But having the awareness, what I got was that I was on my own in a marriage. So remembering is trusting our intuition, trusting ourselves, and then remembering back to society. Like dismember if you take an arm off, and then remember that arm. So if we all come back, I can see that. I can see the disconnection. Listen to the language. Separateness, disconnection, ego. They're all responsible for keeping us apart. But our heart and our soul craves companionship. We crave love and togetherness. We crave the little words like peace, love, joy. Connection's a big word, so that one didn't work. But so I believe, well, I'm learning to believe and starting to believe, the more we trust ourselves and follow that consciousness, that higher self, the more connected we will become, and then the more we remember. And one, like Conversations with God talks about it a lot. And he says, you only need to remember. There's nothing you need to learn. And I can feel it. I can feel it. And I don't know, look around. If you ask someone a question like, how do you live a happy life? People will tell you. They'll tell you exactly what to do. We might not be doing it. If people said, how do I lose weight? Well, it's simple. You just eat less and exercise more. It's not like rocket science, right?
Yeah.
So we've got all the logic. And I believe the logic is part of the remembering. Like we actually know what we should be doing. And then you're going to get into a whole nother ball game of shadow and upper limiting and self-sabotage, which I believe is the human condition, and conquering those is part of this whole crazy game that we're playing, right?
Mm. When you're talking there about remembering, what comes up for me, I always, like, we homeschool our girls, as you probably well know, and when I heard the distinction between education and educare. Educare is the root of the word, the modern word education, but like so often, the modern use of a word is completely disconnected from the actual ancient origins. And modern education is, you're a vessel. It's just like you're a mug, you're an empty mug, and like even though you sort of say, no, I'm not, I have all this intuition, doesn't matter. Like we're just sit there, shut up, be quiet. Yeah, but I'm a boy. I want to climb. I want to like walk around. I want to scream. I want to joke. I want to laugh. I want to like just flick an elastic at the dude beside me. Why? Because I'm just full of this massive energy. Sit down, be quiet. And education is, we will fill you up for 15, 16, maybe 20 odd years, depending how far somebody goes in the education system. And you just be quiet within reason. Don't ask questions. Or if you ask questions, just, accept the approved answers and don't ask too much more. This is personal narrative coming in. I was one of those dudes that just kept asking questions. But like it's like irrespective of your emotional response. Just be the good student, to be the good boy, the good girl, was just sitting there and receiving it all. Whereas educare, excuse me, I have a sneeze coming on. It could come any minute, or it could come in a couple of minutes. Bad timing, live on air. Educare is drawing out that which lies within. That's the
beautiful,
the ancient root of it. Which, if you look at the modern system of education, it's the literal polar opposite of it. Depending, okay, there's some beautiful, new, more evolved, progressive educational parts of the systems, but they're still just relatively small pockets. But it's like drawing out that which lies within. So it really just ties in exactly with what you're saying, which is just remembering. It's enough to remember who we are as men.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful word.
Jason, I'm fascinated, I suppose it's just naturally leading on from remembering, but I know you have incorporated meditation quite powerfully on a regular basis in your life. And I know I believe you went on quite an intensive meditation retreat, one at least. I think you did it with Tony Benici at one point.
Yeah.
Could you just expand on that? What meditation has come to mean for you in this process of remembering?
You're good at these questions. That's great. I haven't meditated for like a week and a half at the moment, so full transparency. But because I'm human, right? And that's the beautiful part of it all, is that, but I notice when I'm not meditating, so I just want to throw that in there. Meditating slows my world down. It's slowly grinding a halt to this mother effing bullet train that's been racing through my life for like 40 years. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I love what Tony always says, a minute a day is a meditation practice. any time that we can take to slow down and just take it comes under the self-care banner, it comes under the self-love banner, it comes under the understanding banner and the spiritual banner and the awakening banner. I mean, it's the number one thing. And every teacher, preacher, patriarch, matriarch, they've all talked about it. They've all said, meditate. So yes, we be listening to that, and I think we are now. It's becoming more acceptable, isn't it? So the silent retreat, Tony taught me to meditate. He was the one that really got it cemented for me 2 or 3 years ago. And but now I find, how everybody says, oh, the week's going so fast, or the day's going so fast, or oh my God, we're into October already. The whole year's just gone. Honestly, this year and the year before, I had a wee taste of it, but this year I'm finding actually time slowing down. And that's a great reason to do it. If you can't find any other reason, that's a great reason. So yeah, and the meditation retreat, we did a week of silence and no eye contact either. I wasn't ready for that. Nobody said that before we got there. So I was like, whoa, that's different. But like they said, even eye contact is noise. Looking in someone's eyes is noise. I really respected that. So yeah, I mean, I highly recommend anybody do one of those silent retreats. It's pretty punishing. There's a lot of meditating, which is sitting still. And in the Mondo Zen or Japanese Zen Buddhism meditation, there's no moving. There's zero movement. So they do a wee chime like 3 times. By the third one, you can't move. You don't move. I love to take these things seriously, Mark, so I really try not to move. And that was actually the joy of it, because like the minute the third bell went off, you're ready, you're sitting, no moving, and then your ear would start to itch. And you know what happens with that, eh? Like it starts burning and it starts like getting so freaking seriously painful. But I conquered, that was one of the little things that I conquered. I conquered the itch. I conquered the will to move. I conquered because they were only 30-minute stretches. And then we walked for 10 minutes around the Zendo. And then we went back in and meditated for 30 minutes. And then we did Qi Gong, which is like Tai Chi, for half an hour, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. So it was all very good, but you just had to get through those intense times where your leg would fall asleep. You'd get up to do the walking and you're kind of hobbling along because your leg.
I just didn't think I'm doing like jiu-jitsu now. You signed a disclaimer, but I didn't think going on a Zen meditation retreat, you signed a disclaimer. Your limbs might not work after this shit.
Yeah. I actually did worry about. I was like, would this do some serious damage? But there was no one to ask.
Yeah. At that point, you can't even freaking look at them.
Yeah.
And Jason, okay, you have the intensive, and I know my meditation master, from Buddhist perspective, he would have always said it's like, okay, it's one thing to be within the retreat, you're away from all distractions, you have this high of inspiration, insight, but then you come back and it's like what he called the kitchen sink phase. It's like you're back, mundane, everyday living. It just mightn't be so set up like the retreat is for that flow of inspiration. How did you find the reintegration after such a profound experience?
One word, Mark, and I don't know how other people feel about this word, but there's one word that helps to make it all make sense and that can bring longevity to something like that, and that word is patience. And I'm still working on that every day. I don't think maybe there's not a mountain to conquer with that. Maybe that will always be there, but After something like that, every time the kitchen sink stuff comes up, it's kind of like have that patience. And, for the first while, it's really easy, and then life comes back the way it normally is. And so then the kids are annoying, or, something's going wrong at work. But I feel very lucky to keep being able to bring that word back to myself. And I'm not a Zen master or anything, so like I get just as wound up as anybody, but for some reason that word just lands. And even just this week, like 2 days ago, my middle child, Rico, he's 11, and we were trying to have just a family chat, and he couldn't do it. He wanted to get up, and he was moving around, and he was actually really trying to annoy me. He was actually like dancing in front of me, and I was able to say to him, do you just want me to get annoyed? Why don't you just go make that noise out there? And so he'd make noise and then he'd come back in. Yeah, so I think that's obviously an ongoing process, and one I can report to feeling stronger in that process probably every day. Seems so simple, right? But it's not. We all know it's not.
Yeah, you're reminding me of my first 10-day retreat down in Zujinberry in Ireland. Meditation retreat, full on teachings, Buddhist teachings, and I think I was in my early 20s, I don't know, 23, 24.
Oh, wow.
Fucking like a volcano of good intentionality. Like I was like a hybrid of Mahatma Gandhi and Conor McGregor, fucking like coming to the end of that. It was like, I remember the final day, we were in the tent where sort of the beginners were there, and they were just gently talking about sort of kitchen sink and reintegrating it to life, and continuing the practice, and we were asking different people just what they were intending to do and how their experience was, and people were sort of saying, oh well, I find I don't know, will I be able to do it, and life. And I could find myself getting progressively sort of bullish and a little bit irritated by all of this. I was like, this is fucking mediocre. It's like, then I put my hand up. I brought the microphone over. It's like, myself personally, I get, might be a challenge for others, but I'm planning. I don't know. I made this like big declaration. I think I was meditating.
I love it.
More often than the fucking Dalai Lama himself. I was like, no, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get my mat, I'm going to get my practice, I'm going to do my teachings, I'm going to get up at fucking 6 o'clock every single morning between now and the next retreat, blah, blah, blah. And I sort of felt like, it's like obviously a warrior energy. It's like I have the word on it now. Was there the sort of lover archetype floating around? He probably was there hidden. And the king wasn't fully, like he had a bit more sense possibly. But I was feeling it. And I remember this elderly man, such a beautiful, sweet, sort of a quiet, peaceful demure about him. And he didn't say much. But I remember he just politely sort of smiled over at me. And his smile irritated me, because it was like my mind at that time, my interpretation was, that's fucking condescending, that smile. I was like, I was like, what's he gonna say now? And he took the microphone, and it was reminding me of what you were saying. It's like patience. He's like, so I can't remember exactly, but the essence of what he said was, Mark, I love your energy, the energy of a young man. I love that you're like up and at, and you feel so motivated. I love that. But all I sort of say to you from my perspective, I've been here quite a number of times, is just have patience with your practice and have patience with yourself. And I remember my mind sort of scrambling to go, he's coming from a decent place. He's not attacking me. I was sort of like, I nodded ahead, and it's like, oh, thank you. Inner story at the time was, look at old man, you might have fucked up along your life, but you don't realize how fucking brilliant I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no humility at all. And like there I was fucking like, okay, I banged out 5-6 days, I was roasting hot. But then relationship, you know, early relationship with Matilda, life, money, kitchen sink hit, and it was fucking hard. And it was hard. Hard because there wasn't the bedrock of patience.
Yeah, 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 beautiful. And when we left our retreat, the head Roshi, he said, when you go back, no one likes a Buddhist, but everyone loves the Buddha. He was saying, just be the Buddha. That really resonated with me. Yeah. Because a Buddhist is always like, come and do this, or this is what you should do. It comes from judgment and not good enough and all that sort of stuff. Whereas the Buddha just sits and bees.
How have you found the difference in you mentioned you held yourself transparent and accountable. There's been a week and a half that you haven't done meditation. What would you describe as the difference, Jason, between a week and a half when you're not doing versus when you're in regular flow of doing meditation on a daily basis?
Well, that's easy for me because like when I'm doing it regularly, things are slower, I'm calmer, and I can make decisions quicker. Yeah, and less overwhelm. There's kind of like an air of, it's all inside my head, right? But there's an air inside my head of just calmness, or the ability to think and make a decision quicker, not get overwhelmed, get stressed, get reactive, and yeah.
You hold quite a position in your company because you're the owner of the company and the recruitment company. I know just in the last connection call, Jason, you mentioned that this year has been quite exceptionally challenging for you as a man. In that regard, what came up in this year within the company, and how are you meeting the challenge now going forward?
So the company turned 8 in August, just gone, and back when it was turning 7, during the few months leading up to that, I was working with a coach, which was amazing, and I really wanted to go big. I wanted to make a bigger impact and a bigger difference. Look, money's money. I'm driven by the hierarchy of needs and a fear of getting old and not having enough money. Like I can talk about them very transparently because I've always felt those, and that's always driven me. But I felt like I was more on a tangent of, I really want to create a company that will change the way New Zealanders live, work, and play, how they'll find work, how they'll enjoy their work, all that sort of stuff. So I went all in, and I got a general manager, which I had needed for years, like somebody between me, the entrepreneur who keeps changing his mind, and my employees who love doing the work. I drove them nuts because I'd be like, okay, full steam ahead. And then a week later, I'd be like, oh, maybe we should just come over here, guys, and we'll do this. And so drove them nuts. So got the general manager, and then we started hiring, got a bigger office, and just really went all in. And it didn't work for me. And that's not to say it wouldn't work for anybody, because I believe it would. But if from my personal circumstance, I took my eye off the ball. I tried to hand over things too quickly. I was at work every day and I was an integral part of the work. But I think mentally, I'd moved past where we were at, and then got too big in my mind. I had someone that was creating with me, so that was amazing. But the people we were employing weren't keeping up with the money that we were spending to grow. Never really verbalized it in such a clear way, but that is definitely what happened. And so by November last year, we were losing like 20 grand a month. And then December, 30 grand a month. And I was like, whoa, I've been in business 20 years with a very good business that's always provided me with a regular income and a good income. So I've never really had to, and I've done heaps of different things. I think I've had like 3 or 4 different businesses along the way. But so we started losing money, and then, but the idea was it will turn, and these people are going to come good, and we're going to get all this custom, and we're creating this system, and yeah, so I held on too long because I wasn't actually present. And I saw a channeling lady about 3 months ago, and she said to me, "You have a problem with being present." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I can listen to people. I'm more present than most people I know." Being all judgy and righteous. Sorry about that. And boy, did I get a lesson. And I've noticed how unpresent I've been since she said that. What a gift. What an absolute gift. So I used to think I was about 80% on the present scale. Turns out I'm 20. So I've got a lot of good presencing to do. And it's effing beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I've worked out for myself the parts of it to be present, which is like listening to understand, not listening to respond. Now that's how we get present. Putting my judgments down. When I'm standing in front of somebody, I'm judging them. I'm judging their looks. I'm judging what comes out of their mouth. I'm judging what the hell they did 10 years ago. So I'm not listening. I'm not being present. So stripped all the cost out of the company. Had meetings with the accountants and stuff, and they were like, "This is dire. We lost a lot of money, over 6 figures. And my house is also attached to the business. So if I lose the business, I lose the house. And that's going to cut me deep. That's too much. That's too much." So stripped all the... Is this what you wanted to know? Like,
yeah, rock on.
Yeah.
I suppose it's just the reality of situations, expansive guys. And this is why it's just this to keep the conversation real, guys. I just sort of invite the listener into how I sort of set this call up with every guy, which is just like Jason and Mark at the kitchen table having a cup of coffee. It's real conversation, and I find this is why it's so important, and I'm so grateful that you're embracing this so much, so vulnerably and courageously, because every guy has stories like this. What I find in podcasts is, very often it's the guy, the far side of the gauntlet, the far side of the Grand Canyon. The heroic work is already done, and it's like, yeah, fuck, he already has multiple bestsellers. He already is a millionaire. He's already like the world champion. He's already. And yeah, they can talk about the sort of the tough times, but it's like, yeah, but fuck, what about the guy that's sort of fresh, pretty much going through that. So definitely, I think it's but it's resonating with that. And this really goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is speaking from vulnerability, speaking that it's okay for Jason Seaward to actually speak about a situation that he's going through. And you're speaking for myself, and you're speaking for every guy that will listen in, because we're all going through situations that, we need to be able to get through it, to speak courageously, speak vulnerably, and hold the ground of, I can speak about this, but I'm not the situation. So by all means, I just wanted to put a little bit of context there just for everybody listening in. But yeah, I'm loving where you're going with this, Jason.
Yeah, you're so right. It is, and because I've trained in that vulnerability, I can talk like that now. Like it doesn't hurt. They say tell the truth until it doesn't hurt anymore. I got that from Nathan, my brother. That's a beauty. So anyway, it's turned around, but it is that work. It is. There's no replacement for doing the work, right? That was my big lesson. 2 lessons: being present, and there's no replacement for doing the work. And in what you're saying now about the vulnerability, that for me is the bit that I've needed to conquer. Being able to speak openly and genuinely, authentically about what's going on for me and how that's been. And even that journey's been pretty crazy. I mean, I had 4 staff at one stage, and I was when I first learned about vulnerability through Brene Brown, listening to all of her work, I was like, oh wow, what if I could change a man's life with a sentence? This thing popped into my head. What if there was a sentence I could say to a man and it would completely alter his trajectory? Unfortunately, I now know there's a lot of judgment in that and a lot of crazy shit. And so I would have these weird conversations with people, customers, candidates that we were trying to find work for. And so these 4 staff eventually pulled me into the office, and they had a cease and desist conversation with me. They're like, we don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop it because you're freaking people out. And I was like, it's okay. I figured it out about 2 weeks ago. I've stopped doing it. I understand. Thank you for having the courage to confront me with it. And as I learned to drive vulnerability, and I don't know what your experience is with being vulnerable, and there's a lot, especially around that male suicide. There's a lot of like, speak up, talk to somebody, and that's a vulnerable thing. And it would appear to me like, or even just through my own process of learning to be vulnerable and what that looks like and how do I do it and when is it suitable and what's too much and what's enough. It's a freaking minefield out there. And so I went through it like a bull in a china shop. I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to try it. And it was brutal. I upset people. I got things wrong. Talk about a vulnerability hangover. There were so many times I was like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And I'm pretty sure I've probably still got a bit of a reputation as a nutcase when it comes to oversharing or, like learning to drive that vulnerability thing. But I'm so glad I did. I would do it again for what I've got out of it. I would definitely do it again. How have you found it?
Possibly some of the same stuff, but I think my perspective and leaning in with my powerful, beautiful queen here and goddess Matilda, she's definitely leading with the just be your true real self. And sort of to a point, it's like I remember I was a bit bullish in the beginning. It was that sort of protective mechanism. It's like, screw the critics, screw the naysayers. But what I've learned is, it's not them. It's not the other person. And it's not even screw my own ego. I know we've spoken powerfully before about shame, and this year has just been me deep diving into my own shame and what's the mechanisms of that. But it has nothing to do about the outside. What I'm finding more and more is just it's not screw the critic, and it's not screw, because the next level is, well, what's the critic? The inner critic. Because, if there's no inner critic, well, then what's the effect of the outer critic can have? It can't have an effect. But screw the inner critic, you're going against yourself. And that was sort of, that never did it with me. And I know some sort of Buddhist approaches, it can be, the ego is this malevolent, almost evil 24/7 out to try and trip you up in your spiritual practice. Why do we practice? Why do we do the teachings? Is to sort of get rid of this. But it's playing with words. Ultimately, to go, then you reach egolessness. It never existed in to beginning. I don't know. I've sort of reconciled it within my own self. I don't say this within myself. It's like I'm not trying to get rid of anything within me. I'm not trying to get rid of the critic. The people have their opinions, and they're sacred opinions. They're coming from their story. Cool. My story is the only story, and it's like, if there's inner critical thinking, and there's defense mechanisms, but it's to learn to just love that inner critic. Forget the outer critic. I just love the inner critic. Like you mentioned to me before about doing so many videos. You're doing tons of videos. You're like, both of us have this practice. Good old Tony Benice's expansive impact in the world is setting these super cool 365 Facebook Live games or challenges. But there's many times when I put something out, and then maybe that I felt that was really, really good. It was raw, it was powerful, I was in the zone, and nobody likes the shagging thing. when some half hammed together crap where I wasn't feeling inspiring, and it just sort of, I did it, I was going through the motions, and I get fucking 4 comments about it, and people are like, oh yeah man, that touched me, and I'm like, yeah, but this shit here was the big one. But it's allowing that part of me, and I love what Nathan had said to you, is like, tell the truth till it doesn't hurt. But it's like that self, just love that self, and love the way it's always trying to protect me. What a lovely powerful intention to have this aspect of the psyche that is 24/7 with the best intentions, trying to protect me, trying to save me from experiencing suffering. And it's just
shame.
learning to love that. And it's like, in loving that, and in acknowledging that aspect of my psyche, it's like to derive the best parts of it. It's like, wow, if I could have half the dedication of that part of my psyche, but to my conscious unfoldment, to my speaking my truth, how unstoppable would I be? And that's where I'm just sort of playing around with this idea of the critic and people outside and the inner voice. How has
you're getting there, man? That's beautiful. Yeah, I see that in you. That's beautiful. Great description.
And Jason, like, you have, just for guys out there, like we mentioned the videos, you're really almost like most of the year through, or 3/4 way through the 365, doing a personal Facebook Live every single day. How is that process of unapologetic self-expression going for you?
It's fucking awesome. It's so good. 279 consecutive lives today, and it's really helping me on my journey to who I am, right? Because I've got to talk about something every day, and a couple of really good things have come for me. So one of them was, who am I? That's because several people at the beginning were like, why are you doing it? What are you doing? And I was like, I think I want to find out who I am. I don't even know where that came from. That wasn't my intention when I started out, but that's how it kind of developed, because I started to notice when you've got to talk about something every day. So there's a lot of like just ticking the boxes in there. There's, and then occasionally I speak my truth. And so the second thing that's come out of it is really being with the vulnerability. So how I started these videos was my finger pushed the button. It would just push the button because like, it's like, whoa, stop it. And yeah, it would actually literally surprise me. And I hardly watch any of them. So there's hundreds that I've never watched, but I bet if I went back to those early ones, I reckon I'd be able to see the surprise on my face, because like I was literally like, oh, okay, shit, right. And so thankfully that's, like you say about the Māori guy that travelled to Ireland, his inner spirit or his spirit guide sent him there. Mine was pushing the bloody button. My spirit guide was just pushing. So anyway, but I love the definition. So in the dictionary, the definition of vulnerability or being vulnerable is that you literally have to expect to be wounded. So by definition, if we're going to be vulnerable, we can't do it if we're not fit. If we're okay with being vulnerable, then by definition we're not being vulnerable. And my later videos now, like particularly probably my last 3 days, like I've been nervous to do the video because I've known what I wanted to talk about and I haven't wanted to talk about it. And then at the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, why did I say that? So I'm in the thick of that vulnerability. Because if it's not visceral, then we're not being vulnerable. And so when a guy might say to another guy or something, like, oh, I've just been vulnerable with you, or I'm going to be vulnerable now, or we say it to our partners, but we're literally not almost shaking and like terrified to say it or do it, then we're acting vulnerable. And there's a big difference. So that's been a very big help for me to really thrash that out over the videos to what that is actually like. And if I can keep going, the other amazing thing that happened for me in my journey to who I was, and I think this could be helpful to anybody because it could just be me. It could just be me that it worked with. But everyone talks about loving yourself. And I was like, how do I love myself? Like, I hadn't had a relationship for like 15 months. And and it clicked in my head. I was like, what if I could love myself the way I would love a new partner? When you're all in the zing and you've got it all going on and you're just all loved up. I was like, how can I do that for myself? And I was like, well, I don't know. What am I going to just like hug myself or something? And I came up with this notion to find something about myself, non-physical, that I could love, like really love, like I could enjoy that part of me and look forward to when I see it being expressed and just like really love on it. And I really want to impress, like just the feeling of it. You can't fool yourself. We can't go, oh, I really love myself. And then in the back of our mind be going, well, not really. I'm just saying that. And so the part of me that I chose to love was the part of me that loves everybody and wants to make a difference. That little boy in me that had all those aspirations and all those beautiful dreams and visions of what was possible and, how really that's played out in all areas of my life. And it may have got smacked on the head and it may have got buried in the sand and it may have gone through the rinser and got covered in soap, but that person, that part of me keeps popping out and going, can I help you? Can I help? Can I do something? What do you need? I love you guys. I really love everybody. And so I really, and I don't know if you can tell, but I really love that part of me. I really, really love that part of me. Thank you for letting me get that out.
It's such a crystallization, the words that you're using, because I still remember, I said this to you in private calls, I still remember the first group call, where we met was on your brother Nathan Seaward's group call, group coaching call, which was the Extraordinary Life group. And I just still remember, it's like I didn't get talking with you directly in that call, but I came off with Matilda and it was like, Jesus, Nathan's brother. It's just Jason. He's just a personification of love. He's love. He's love. And in those calls, it was very clear to me. Definitely in those moments, it was that inner boy just saying, guys, I'm here, I'm love, I'm free, I'm just coming from there. And it's like you laugh from there, you spoke from there, you joke from there, you gesture from there, you ask questions from there. Really, really clear. Um, and one part, what comes up for me, and just to share it intimately with the guys listening in, when you say about you can sort of think you love yourself, but you just can't trick yourself about that. And I know, like, I experienced such a profoundly intimate experience with you that you brought out of me in one of our beautiful calls, where I sort of thought I was loving myself. I really did. I thought, Mark, you're getting in the zone here. There's a lot of people out there feeling vulnerable and all this. And I had this thing with vulnerability at the time. there was a key sign that there was a chink in my psychoenergetic armor. But it's like, up and at it. Probably remnants of that old story of the elderly man at the Buddhist retreat, 14 years later, 10 years later, whatever it was. But I remember I had this idea, you're loving yourself, self-praise is the highest praise. I used to sort of say that, and I thought it was good. And then, you acknowledged me, which was quite simply just, an acknowledgement. It was just acknowledging the truth in me as a man as you saw it. And I sort of deflected it back to you. I wanted to talk about you, and you, whoa, Mark, whoa. Do you realize what I'm after saying to you? And to speed up like the next sort of 15, 20 minutes of conversation, like I slowed down, and I could immediately, when you slowed me down, I could feel this lump in my throat of, it's like part of my psyche just didn't want to be called out, didn't want to have the spotlight on it, and felt resistant to have somebody say something nice to me and actually slow down and receive it. And then, you effectively, I asked you, oh, could you please do that? And I cried like a baby and I'd say like a baby, not in the disrespectful sense from the culture. I cried like that baby, like that boy in me that just cried because it actually was being heard, was being seen, was being held by your presence. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And my life hasn't been the same since. And I went on to do the 30-day vulnerability challenge, which is to just contact somebody in my network and ask them to acknowledge me and just receive that. But in the receiving of that, it's such a profound gift. And I bring that forward because, like, to guys, this tough out and at it, the warrior type, that I'm talking about, like, oh, I have my shit together, and I can give praise, but I don't need to receive praise. I'm floating my own ship. But it's just to be okay with, like, there is that boy inside, and it is okay to actually slow down. And it's one of the most beautiful things is to receive that praise, to receive the compliment, to receive the acknowledgement. And it's a profound gift. So thank you, sir. I think this podcast probably has come, indirectly in many ways from actually learning to receive. So, I'm receiving from you, and everybody that's listening in is receiving that gift too. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And that was a beautiful moment, and that's something we can do for each other. Any man, if we know about it, and if we can find that moment where we can do it for another man and help another man just to slow down, or just to notice when they're not receiving it. And then, because that's all that we did that day, like I could see that you weren't receiving it. I was like, hang on a minute, do you realize? And then you got it. And then that's a beautiful thing that men can do. When does that ever happen?
It's sort of like coming from the warrior archetype. There could be no greater challenge to set down for another guy from a place of love. It doesn't have to be, on the sporting field, even though that's sacred too. It doesn't have to be in the business world, how much money, how many employees, but just like set the challenge for your brother to receive. Jason, what I invite every guy, like in the essence of New Earth Kings, the king archetype is that beautiful archetype, the visionary, the dreamer inside of us, that conscious presence that I think sort of maps in with that inner child perfect witnessing awareness that has followed us the whole way through. You've spoken very powerfully about that during our podcast today. But going forward with all this that's emerging within you, from connection to just, regrounding and remembering who you truly are, and that message that boy has to bring to the world of love and joy and peace and harmony. I invite you to project into sort of 10 years time, all limits, all excuses, all the self and its sacredness to the side. What in your wildest dreams, what impact does that inner boy most want to have in the next 10 years on life, in your life, locally, maybe even globally? What would that impact be?
Thank you. I know exactly what that is. So I've just recently discovered that with estranged people, I talked about it on my video today, with estranged family members, or there can be whole, like, mother, father, sons, daughters that can be estranged from a whole family. There can be all this disconnect, and I have a dream. I can see it, where, because when that person gets outcast from the family, I hear people say, "We've tried everything. We can't get them back in. We miss them." And two things are going on there. One is that when we don't have connection, when we don't know what connection is, we don't miss it. I don't miss those people because I'm not connected to them. But actually, I'm not connected to many people. So look out, people, because I won't miss you if you're not around. But then those people that do know about connection, whether it's empathy, compassion, because they're all the parts that build connection, right? They will miss those people, but they may only be one half of the people, so those people will remain estranged. And I can see a time when those connections will be reconnected, when those members will be remembered. And I know how that happens, but there's a very strong reason why it's not happening yet. And the reason is, the solution for that is not what people want to hear. Otherwise, we'd be already doing it, right? No one would be estranged. Everyone would be connected. So there's a reason why we're not connected. And I don't even know if I want to touch on that today, because it might just put a downer on the podcast, because like nobody wants to know what it is that you can do to actually make those reconnections. But I see, I had a thought yesterday where I could see all of the families being reconnected. Can you even imagine? Can people in the world even imagine what the world would look like if all families were connected? I can see it. I can feel it. The children will be happier. They'll have uncles and aunties. They'll have, mothers and fathers, grandfathers and grandparents. They'll have love and connection with their sons and daughters and the siblings, and then the granddaughters and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. That's what I see. I see that connection coming back. Take down the fences. Take down the barriers. Take down all of the things we've put up that gets in the way of our vulnerability. We're all there because we're vulnerable. We're being protective. And so when that stops, that's when connection and remembering of this whole human race, one family at a time. I can see it. I can feel it. But that's what's coming for us, because look where we've come from. What do other people see in the future? I hear a lot of people that see doom and destruction in the future. I don't see that, Mark. I see connection.
I think that's just the heart essence of New Earth Kings. You know, and that's
Beautiful.
why this is why we're coming in together. And like New Earth Kings is not about my movement; it's about this our collective movement as men, and connection is at the core of it. And my absolute belief, and I think every single guy listening into this episode would be coming from the exact same point, is there's no greater embodiment and rising embodiment than yourself, Jason, to spearhead your sacred part in bringing that connection back. So thank you so much for sharing that vision, Jason. Such a powerful podcast. We laughed at the beginning just before the call came on, like about the time. I'm looking at the time, and we're rocking it, boy. We are rocking it because Jason Seaward.
It's too long. It's too long.
No, it's good. It's good. It's beautiful, sacred communication. I consciously, I say this to guys listening in, is I consciously, the time there, I don't like, you can say, oh, there's this precise time. Sometimes there's sacred conversation. It's a bit like, when you have that sacred conversation over the kitchen table, say to your wife or say to your best mate, no, sorry, man, I have to go off to bed now. Fuck it, like, heart and soul was open there. Cool. Yeah, I like that. But I got to get up in the morning. Or I gotta, I've got five-a-side footy to go to. It's keeping that sacred uh, communication going, and it's sort of humbly modeling, just the powerful connections that we can have. And I enjoy every single time that I jump on any call with you, group call, one-on-one, and this has been an extra special experience, Jason. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. I honor you. Like everything that you're doing. Um, you're a beautiful man. I can see your soul. I feel it, and I love what you're doing. Yeah, there'll be many more conversations, I'm sure.
Undoubtedly. Thank you. Jason, guys listening in, obviously, I'd say so many of them will resonate deeply on maybe many aspects, or there could be one core aspect, and they're just feeling this rising impulse to maybe connect in with you. Where's the best place that guys can connect in with you online?
Oh, just on Facebook, Jason Seaward. Just friend me. Yeah, I love all connections. It's connections. Bring it on. Yeah, be connected. Let's get connected.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Brilliant.
Mm.
Jason, thanks for coming on. Thank you from me, and thank you from everybody listening in. Guys, fantastic. Guys, that has been the new episode of New Earth Kings podcast. I mean, such a powerful crystallization of the concept, the idea of connection. Jason, like just bringing on just how the impact, how the profundity of the sort of negative impact that it is to be disconnected. But then we're all part of the hero's journey. It's almost like impossible not to be disconnected, because it's in our disconnection we are forced into the underground of the hero's journey to come out the far side. What Jason is saying is like you come out that far side, and that reconnection, that remembering, as Jason spoke so powerfully about, it's like remembering who you are, reconnecting with who you are, reconnecting with that boy, that beautiful spirit inside of you, as Jason's just reminded us so intimately, so powerfully, so vulnerably. And it's vulnerable. Jason just holds back, did not hold back on that message. There's to be vulnerable, which is to be open by definition, to be wounded. You can't, this self-growth, this self-emergence, this self-realization, it's stripping back the defenses. So it's to be open and to be okay with that. Find your group, find your tribe, find your brotherhood locally. Definitely come on. We have the Facebook You Are Kings group. Apply to come on that. You're very, very welcome. Jason, myself, and a growing band of other brothers around the planet are coming together so we can have that sacred space where we can turn up vulnerably, but also turn up, as Jason said, in that power, in that courage, in that getting things done. And like marrying this masculine and feminine. So I join Jason for sure, and I love his vision of, the next 10 years, seeing more and more emerging connection between families, between individuals. And indeed, if that happens, when you get to the base of society, from the base, from the locality, the local revolutions, personal revolutions, that's where global revolutions will come next. So it's just bringing connection on the planet, and what could be a more beautiful vision and a more sacred part. And, you know, as always at the end, this podcast is about you. It's about you starting, leading your personal revolution, then into your local revolution, then into your personally led global revolution, or your revolution that you join other brothers, other sisters in arms. It's such a beautiful unfoldment. There's so much hope. I believe in you. Jason sure as hell believes in you, and the universe is behind you. Have a beautiful day. Love you lots. We'll chat again soon. Take care. Thanks, guys, for listening to this epic conversation with the amazing Jason Seaward. New Earth Kings, unapologetic men, unfuckwithable brotherhood, unstoppable revolutions. To join the growing international movement aimed at inspiring 1 million plus men to passionately engage in leading their personal, tribal, and local/global revolutions, creating a world worthy of gifting our kids' generation. Click now to join. Find us at facebook.com/groups/New Earth Kings/.